Зовут Николай Усков.
My name is Nikolai Uskov, Forbes director. We will discuss the problems of intellectual property and mass media. This topic is quite obvious for our discussion because mass media are the most aggressive, so to say, in the intellectual property space. There are different issues to discuss. The mass media disseminate information, disseminate the intellectual property. I would like to start my discussion with the problem of, or with the issue of interaction with the aggregator of social networks and the media. We all know that the social networks unite about 3 billion people around the world, different social networks, and they are the major media in the world. The social networks aggregators. This is the paradox of today's development of the today, that the major mass media do not produce their content. They disseminate it, distribute it, but do not produce it. If you speak about the major social media and social networks, this is Facebook, and its founder, Mark Zuckerberg, in 2014 said that he was going to turn Facebook in the major newspaper of the world. So Facebook doesn't produce anything. A lion's share from the commercial also accounts for this new media. And in the traditional media, there is a question how to survive in these circumstances and how to find the means to produce qualitative, high-quality content. So I would like to start with this issue, how we interact with social networks, with aggregators, and either the where the intellectual property is, and whether the rights are infringed upon in this interaction. I think you all know about all the methods of speed download as instantics, Google IMP or Open News. In any case, the social networks use the wish of a user to download the page as quickly as possible, and the users do not browse these pages or get to these pages. Would you like to start as a vice president of IP Chain? How do you, in legal issues, how do you estimate if the intellectual rights are infringed upon by the producers of content, by national networks and other aggregators, and what to do with this? Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that nowadays there are a lot of objects of intellectual property which could be mentioned as those are not mentioned in the legislation but exist in reality. And the story of e-com of social networks, which is not an object in Russia, everywhere in the world, it is acknowledged as a separate object of intellectual property. The issues of rights of bloggers also raise, and all connected with social media has penetrated into our life, and there are many issues concerning usage of those resources in the legal framework, and whether they penetrate into the field of traditional media. Of course, there are questions, and at the same time, we should not violate the freedom of speech and social network, and at the same time do not block I guess my colleagues would participate in this discussion. There is another question. We compete not only with big social media and aggregators, but also with pages of influencers. The same is about Instagram. Yes, but the legislation does not consider influencers as media, and actually most of them are media. Their audience is 80 million. Their page is monetized, and they influence the minds and life of a country, depending on how many you would use the owners of accounts and pages in your purposes. This is a serious problem which is not regulated legally. The simplest things, for example, I must indicate in my text, if it is in a commercial text, that it is put there on as a commercial. So if I do not make such a mark or such a note, then I'm repressed, so to say, by the state. Of course, influencers do not make these notes. Another point: if someone uploads a photo in the internet, and if some influencer uses this photo in his resource, and later on there are questions why he could do so, and everybody forgets that there must be a reference to the author of this photo and mention where you took this photo from. Speaking about media, this is a real problem because not everyone realizes that this reference should be given. So this is not regulated by the law. Well, it is regulated a bit from the point of view of copyright. But as an object of intellectual property, it's not regulated in Russia. But in the world, it exists, and I believe that in the future there will be some changes in or amendments in the legislations of different countries concerning the recognition or acknowledgement of this as a separate segment. So, and there should be rights for this. What do you think about the interaction between social media and traditional media? On the one hand, traditional media receive a big traffic from social media, but on the other hand, the change of algorithm of materials is a kind of manipulating. They first make people addicted to some resources. For example, some year Mr. Zuckerberg give privileges to the mass media publications. So we get used to this traffic, and then he changes this algorithm, and he says that, for example, our network is for our friends, for communication with friends, cats, dogs, etc. So the commercial content is not that much important, and the traffic drops down. And quite often we are forced to play according to the rules of major social media. I believe that rights are quite often violated. It means that we should monitor and fight with it. This is an ethical issue. I believe that the world should move towards the respect of rights of we must understand that the person who did or something has to be indicated as the author of some publication. All the rules, formally, all the rules are obeyed. That's true, but there are some ways to get this beyond, and some mass media violate these rules. So this is here we have an issue of regulation which we have to discuss. But in general, we cannot exclude. We should remember about the rise in a legal way of thinking of mass media and users of the internet. So mass media will always be the mass media. We will never change this situation. There will be someone who would like to publish something, even violating the rights of someone.
Okay, Dmitry, would you like to join our discussion? You're a lawyer. Yes, I would like to make some comments. First of all, about the cited photographs. I had a separate session yesterday, and these questions were raised there in detail, and we discussed them in detail. So I can sum these discussions up like this. But I would like to start with the main idea that social media use someone's content. Well, nobody, yes, copyright still exists in our country, and so the content can be used, but the permission should be granted. So we have first of all author's content, yes, as a separate type of content when the user wants to download some information. And in this case, of course, you must get this permission if you want to use somebody's content. If you download, for example, it. Or there is a different situation. For example, this is the so-called user's content, GDC content. And in this question, we have a huge question whether the social net is responsible for the user's actions and for the user's content. So we have like the concept of information intermediaries. These are people or intermediaries who probably do not use the content, but they provide this possibility to the users. And under certain conditions, they have this responsibility. They bear this responsibility for the content. But still, I would like to discuss this. And because the social net, do you think that the social net should be responsible for the actions of the users? So on one hand, you can say that this is not my responsibility, but at the same time, we do understand that social nets, they monetize the content which is downloaded in them. So to say that the social net doesn't have any responsibility, this is probably will sound rather strange. And I think that this idea is quite popular among our international colleagues. When they applied and adopted the regulation in the digital sphere, and there are certain, this regulation contains certain limitations about the social nets, which should also take some responsibility, part of the responsibility for the content which is downloaded in this net. As far as I remember, you mean that the social net is responsible for the content which is downloaded in this net? Am I right? Well, almost. This refers to our discussion whether they should take the responsibility. And we are moving towards the necessity, first of all, of getting the permission, so licensing this content. And the second thing, you are liable. You must take. You must track certain violations of the usage of this content. Do you remember the scandal about the apartment which was owned by Neela? That was the name of the girl who owned this apartment. And do you remember when this news was spread in social net, and when she complained, and social net just deleted this news? So that's a different, interesting topic about which I would like to say this is the privacy right. And the essence is that our legislation provides certain balance between rights. So on one hand, you have the right to disseminate the information, to spread the information, and on the other hand, you have the privacy right. And there are certain exceptions for public figures, for example, or when you're spreading the information for public according to public interests. And then we need to find the balance between the privacy of a usual citizen and the privacy of a public figure. And not so long ago, we had a decision of Constitutional Court of the Russian Federation that was about the case when Bezrukov provided the information. And according to the decision of the Constitutional Court of the Russian Federation, private life of public figures can be, under certain circumstances, be disclosed, and it formulated the criteria. But of course, he pointed that this can be done not just to satisfy the public interest, but only when the actions of these public figures concern the life of the society in general. So this is not just to satisfy somebody's curiosity, but when the actions of public figures influenced the society in general. So the Constitutional Court tried to differentiate between what can be revealed, which information, which content can be revealed if you are a public figure, and which information cannot be revealed. I would like also to note about the responsibility of certain nets for the spread of the content, which for example, if this content is at the disposal of, for example, informational channels. So not so long ago, we signed the memorandum between Yandex and major TV channels, and the essence of this agreement that Yandex will clear up and delete all the links to the unauthorized content. That was the story when the market provided this initiative to try to work with such systems as Yandex to somehow find the way to solve this problem. And another real problem, how to treat music content and how to be responsible for this. And nowadays we are working on the project and we believe that this part of copyright must be protected also by the search engines and by such systems as Yandex, and this content, unauthorized content, should be deleted. So civil society tries to discuss these problems and tries to find the solution, how to solve these problems without applying to courts. Artem, would you like to join our discussion? Artem Valiyev, Chief Editor at IA Bashinform. Yes, as a representative of regional mass media, I would like to say that about 30% of our traffic belong to social nets, and today we have a situation that in spite of the fact that this aspect of interconnection or interrelation between social nets and traditional nets probably they need to be regulated, but still we have certain relationship, and we must take into account that usual traditional mass media cannot exist without social nets, and the same way as social nets cannot exist without traditional media. So, but I would like to underline, you were absolutely right when you said that we follow the rules of those social nets which contain and aggregators which provide the nets for downloading the information. This is also a tool to monetize our content. Because our partners, they monetize this content. But it is important to note here that we have a competitiveness between the social nets themselves. Because in Russia, you use not just Facebook, but we have other different social nets where we also are present and from which we start get enough of traffic which can be compared even with Facebook. I'm talking about such groups as VK and Одноклассники and YouTube, and we actively use these social nets, and probably all traditional media, of course, they must be present at all these social nets. And we are coming to this, we are following this direction. And for us, the spread of information in social net. So just yesterday, we noted Karamba TV, one of the representatives of Karamba TV noted that they create content so that pirate resources would borrow or steal this information, but this is the way how to attract more audience. And frankly speaking, I should confess that it is important for us. It is really important for us because this is the way of spreading the information, and this is the way how to get more people involved. And so the audience is increasing, and of course it influences our profits and revenue. So you see, we attract users, and though at the same time this contributes to our reputation.
And the structure of revenues of our company in the social networks has changed. We don't have banner advertisement at the moment, but the amount of revenues is not decreasing. Olga, would you like to join our discussion? I represent traditional mass media and I deal with musical programs. I would like to look at this problem from another angle. We are very much limited by the requirements. We are a member of a Russian state company. We have to register every hour step from the point of view of copyright. It doesn't matter if I use a musical fragment for 3 seconds or an hour. I must make a special document where I should mention the name of the music of the art of the work. Its title, the author of lyrics, etc. So all these things, and the right holder. But YouTube and social networks are not right holders from the as we believe, and it actually hinders our work because we work in informational field. We are not making just musical programs. We are making musical information programs, but to fill in all these documents, I need to, for a very short program, I need to fill in about 8 or 10 programs, documents. So we have, of course, some people who help me to do this, but it requires a lot of time. On the other hand, the social networks are ahead of us because they do not have to do all these things. For example, if they filmed some part of concert, they just upload this in social networks, but you don't have to do all the job that we do. And there is a kind of absurd because we used to have such a notion in our legislation that if I use a fragment up to 40 seconds, I should not do all these things which we do now. Then, about copyright. They expired after 50 years after the death of the right holder, then 70 years, then some more. And, for example, if you speak about Prokofiev, who died in 1953, the copyrights start being protected from the 1st January 1954 for 50 years. What I mean to say, if we want to broadcast Prokofiev's opera, we have to pay a lot to his to the right holders, and we also have to pay to different organizations for this. So I visit many international meetings, and they suffer a lot. Radio France, BBC, German radio stations. They say that it's impossible to work in Russia because of these copyrights, because just to broadcast one opera, they have to pay about 5,000 Swiss francs. And we should mention here that all our radio stations are not commercial ones. These are public radio stations. So we don't get any income of that. I mean to say that everything about modern music, and even not modern music, as Shostakovich, Prokofiev, this is music of last century, it's very much protected. The ancestors of Prokofiev and some others tracked this a lot, and they want to get their share of this. I want to say that we should distinguish between commercial usage and non-commercial usage of music, for example. As for modern music, many directors of philharmonic orchestras try to avoid it. A composer, on the other hand, a composer cannot have his work to be broadcasted. The directors of philharmonic cannot organize the concert because they have to pay. So, and my European colleagues quite often tell me, ask me to give them some opera which is not protected by the copyright. I believe that legislation should think about all these issues and not to make the situation absurd. Evgeny, I would like to join Olga, but I will start with what I should start, so figures. Can we show the presentation, please? I think everyone has seen this document. So we have screens in front of us. We can see this presentation there. This document contains a lot of interesting things in terms of culture. But now we are interested in media or mass media. Is not quite clear for us. If someone doesn't have this, it's quite a big document. You can look through it at leisure. So we have some summary for today's panel. Just look what we have with the mass media. We don't have social networks. Speaking about internet commercial, internet advertisement, but if you want to understand what the social networks are, just look at the internet commercial, the very bottom graph. Here we have only 50% because we believe that. We can see the press is decreasing, broadcast radio is almost idle, the commercial TV is increasing, and the broadcast TV is also increasing. Even if we are a bit doubt about these figures, then if you multiply internet advertisement 2 times, then we understand that internet advertisement brings much more income than state television or public television. This is quite interesting, just for you to understand where we are at the moment. The point is that we do not really understand what media is. Some people believe that social networks are media. Others believe that social networks are a platform, but the mass media are publics in the network. I believe this is the most logical approach. The network only provides an opportunity for the publics to create whatever they want. Saying public, I mean bloggers. yes, a blogger, an author of a personal account, administrator of a group in the social network. So that's what I mean by this term. So if some information revealed publicly, then the owner of this unit, so to say, he's the owner of the mass media. And the approach should be like this, but in the near future, we do not foresee that. In the sidelines of this meeting, I was asked why the information of mass media refers to the cultural sphere. In Russia, it's not so. In the international market, this is different. In Great Britain, for example, there is a Ministry of Digital Development, Culture, Sport and Media. Almost the same, it's in Japan. So some of our I mean to say that these are not ministers of culture as we understand it, but this is a unified body which regulates all the resources which are based on all digital resources. It's interesting in Russia. Some of you know that there is a new draft law on culture. There are mass media are officially mentioned as within the sphere of culture. In this case, if it happens so, I believe then the mass media will fall under the law on state purchase and many others. Actually, this changes from it turns everything upside down. So there will be a lot of trouble. I believe no one would do this, but nowadays the official law says so. On our official site there is a full text. The EU directive on author and copyright is also very surprising. I believe that the copyright is in some deadlock not only in Russia but all over the world. We are in the situation now when we completely misunderstand or do not understand what to do. Mikhail Fedotov says directly it's not known. Why do you think that mass media are within the culture? Because for them the copyright is a very important system as for other segments of this, because it's all built on the right. And if there are some problems in application of law, then this field also have some problems. And the coexistence of traditional and new media makes it impossible for this industry. The state could interfere into this for more harmonic development of the mass media and culture in general, but the state is impotent, or even sometimes it makes the things worse. For example, last week I was called up to the Roskomnadzor and I was fined for putting Basta's video because they heard swearing words there. Then I asked them, and a lot of sites this video is shown. And I asked them if they find those sites. The answer was no, because they are not public, because they are not mass media. So they have some questions to us because we are official mass media, but not to other sides. My question was, if we are official mass media, then probably you would support us. So, but the answer was they cannot support us financially, but they can only fine us. This is the problem in general in the mass media and in culture. So there is no unified, thoroughly thought through policy of the state. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand does. So it's not clear, absolutely not clear, how the policy is made. So, in my opinion, this is the main problem. There is no policy, understandable policy. If there is a unified, understandable policy, then we could figure out what to do and how to work. So it should be discussed in any case. I believe that IPQuorum is one of the places where we discuss these issues, and thanks God that the state participates in such things. Unfortunately, we don't have representatives of Roskomnadzor here. Probably we should provoke Roskomnadzor in some way, for example, to swear, just to draw their attention to this. So the discussions about fining different mass media. So, if we look at our survey, in many cases we do not understand what to be some things where they should be referred. In some cases there is practice, and in some cases there is legislation. In our legislations, the norms, approaches of the 30s, 40s of the previous year. This is of the Stalin times norms. From those times in our legislation, we have that books are not considered to be in the sphere of culture. So, I mean to say that many problems originate from those days when there was censorship and all those things. The issues of culture are supervised by the Ministry of Communication and Communication. The Ministry of Communication and Connection regulates everything which is connected with books, internet, mass media. Moreover, we have Ministry of Industry and Trade. They supervise all the issues concerning the equipment and all these things. And there are a lot of problems which are not solved because each ministry deals only with the questions which within their authority. Some people come to, for example, publishers of books come to some ministry, but the ministry doesn't want to work with them. So there is no clear subordination. Our culture is fragmented to different areas which are very difficult to regulate. So there should be coordination to solve all this. Probably there should be one minister who would solve all these issues or regulate all these issues, but who that person will be? Probably Mr. Putin. Maybe it would be better. So the first.
So nowadays we face the situation that our people in our government, they are not inclined to pay attention to these problems. Unfortunately, this is absolutely a norm when an official person gets this is aware of some problem, but he doesn't want to solve it because it doesn't concern him in particular. And who can make him? Just one person, as you understand. So we try to calculate and try to monitor, and we have different statistics. By the way, we don't have any information from Rosstat, Ross statistics, and it doesn't even understand how internet is working, frankly speaking. And it doesn't. Such things as clubs or galleries are not included to Ross statistics. The same way concerts are not included and music is not included to Ross statistics. So the people who work there, they just don't see it and they don't see the problem. So that's why we cannot get the information, complete information. So we just don't know about it. I can continue talking. Probably you should interrupt me. Well, let's stick to the point, and because our main topic today, you mentioned that copyright is in the dead end nowadays. Yes, it's quite obvious that the people who work in the government and who create laws, they don't understand the problems and they don't have time to react and to adapt, because traditional media don't know how to work and they try to save their own business models, and they don't have time and don't have any inclination to fight with public nets. So everything is in confusion, and it's really difficult how to solve this problem. Because sometimes I just watch the people in the nets and what they can do. Them, for example, use swear words, and they can do this. And we, as traditional, as the representatives of official media, we cannot allow ourselves to behave like this. So if we probably we should try to attract to attract people in the government and make them somehow adapt the laws and adapt the regulations, because I think that nowadays the laws which we have nowadays, they really limit our activity, and we need to find the common language, and because we need to find the terms for example, even about the words, even about the using of swear words. Frankly speaking, this is a part of our freedom. Why is it because of the government to decide that we can or cannot use these words in our language? And we think that Probably there is the other side of the coin, because if government will try to regulate too much, probably it will intervene with our right to the freedom of speech. Well, let me try to answer this question, because I know how it was developed, and we had a huge plus when, for example, music industry was not really regulated by the government. Well, actually, we were forgotten. They forgot about us, and in 1992 this part was missed, probably intentionally, but we cannot say this for sure. So the Minister of Culture didn't regulate our activity, and concert industry, it cannot be regulated on behalf of the government. And on one hand, this is very good, because, for example, in 1992 people could start regulating this sphere, and they were not competent enough for doing this. And so I think that that was a good point. But on the other hand, we have also disadvantages. For example, the industry of recording. This is a huge segment, and which could bring a huge profit, and it worked. I don't know if the representatives of the Studia Soyuz are here. Well, I know that they are participating at IPQuorum, but probably they are not here now. And they went bankrupt. In 2006, a lot of companies went bankrupt just because the business model was changed, and people could download everything absolutely free of charge. So a lot of people migrated from that industry. and that was bad because that sector was very useful for the society, and our government should have paid attention to this sphere, but once again they didn't know about it because this type of business was absent in raw statistics, and they treated it something like this: if the society doesn't need this industry, then just let's forget about it. And it's obvious that, of course, we should take into account the profit for the society. But who can say that, for example, if we have more of good music, it will be good or bad for the society? And, well, in reality, it turned out that we got less music in Russia. So, according to dialectical laws, the quantity passed to quality, and the quality was reduced. And unfortunately, the quality of music nowadays, well, it doesn't correspond to the level of quality which we had 20 years ago. More and more, we have... By the way, did you pay attention that a lot of... nowadays, they broadcast music that was created probably 20 years ago? And the same performers are quite popular. For example, Alla Borisovna is so famous because young people cannot compete because we do not have the financial basis, because people cannot get much profit from music. We don't have streaming, and our research, which was the streaming is growing, and now the figure is about 50% from the level which we had in 1959. So this is in the world. Streaming, is it the same? I guess this is the same situation which we have with public nets. Yes, this is like a digital form of transferring the information. Yes, I believe, and I believe this is the same. It should be referred to the sphere of culture, where the same laws work.
So the state from time to time deals with this. Sometimes they give money, but they should pay more attention to the development. But okay, this is a different topic. I want to give a remark. I see a kind of contradiction in what you are talking about. Of course, there are some public interests, and as for the dissemination of content, on the other hand, you say that about the dropping down of the market. So when we speak that the system of copyright should not exist to get a permit to use the content, it could lead to the worsening of the situation in some creative industries, because creative people in creative industries do not get any revenues from usage of or broadcasting their works. They need money to create new works. If we speak about new media, probably then we should speak about new mechanisms of receiving permits to use content. Here I agree that traditional methods, probably bureaucratic methods, old ones, probably they should be changed and amended. And the blockchain technology probably would help here. But to speak that it's difficult to get permits to use content is not worth it. If you work in this field and you use some content, you must get a permit. And there should be some balance between the interests of the authors and the holders of copyright and others. So if you if you want to freely broadcast, then you probably need some it can be done freely if you make a note that you use somebody's work. I absolutely agree with Dmitry, and I just want to react to Olga's word about 5,000 francs for an opera, and Europe is very unsatisfied with that, and that the state should regulate the story. I don't believe that this is a right approach, because the author has to earn. But if the author died 70 years ago, okay, there are heirs of this person, and they should have their share of or their legacy in this case. I believe this is the question of market, of the cost of the objects of copyright, and the state should not interfere here. The second point is that our colleague said that the state allegedly does not react and does not supervise what is going on in the copyright field. I do not agree with this, because the state is paying attention to that. Roskomnadzor discusses this and works in the field of copyright. I mean to say that the state hears the business and the representatives of the industry. That's true. The state does something in this field, but all the difficulties which are created for the official mass media are really give competitive advantage for those who do not follow these rules. Sometimes the state doesn't know what to do with this, and it happens all over the world. And here I agree with you. The state does what it can do. So, in any case, the state should do something. If we see infringement upon some copyrights or some right holders, if some sites use the content without permit, then the right holder should take some actions. The state provides a certain mechanism for solving these issues, and the state pays attention to that. For example, we have memorandum with Yandex and channels. Roskomnadzor did not sign this document, but they provided assistance for this. So it is all developing. There is no stagnation in this field. That's true. If the state pays attention to that, it should be so, but I don't think that it happens on large scale. The memorandum which you mentioned, do you know if Google joined this memorandum? No, it didn't. But what about this memorandum then? Is it a talk between entities? Which talk to each other with the help of the state, but this is not a complete memorandum. Google should either join this memorandum or just don't exist, because otherwise Yandex must be limited in a case, but Google can do whatever they want. So memorandum is a voluntary agreement, so this is not a law. They agreed upon something, and we can say that all the players in the market should join this memorandum. It's up to them. This is a self-regulation in this market. It seems to me that Yandex have less room for maneuver, so they were made to some degree to join this memorandum. So it's very difficult to say whether all the players in the market should join this memorandum. So there is no law that they must do this. So it's up to them. If there is such a law, then all the market players would be obliged to join this memorandum. Nowadays, it's not so. And here we have another aspect which we should discuss. This is the aspect of with top news. Quite often Yandex is blamed that some news are getting on top, and it's not by chance. Yandex traditionally denies all these allegations and says that this is only by chance, this happens only by chance. So what shall we do with this? There is another important topic, unlimited topic of fake news. How they are formed, how they are distributed, how they influence our life. But even without any fake news, we all know that news delivered in a correct way could collapse the market or lead even to some kind of suicide. So we know all that. When you disseminate or distribute some information which shows somebody in a negative way, so what shall we do with this? Who is responsible? The aggregator, bot, who might be communicating in a way with those news. So these are, so actually this is a problem of all mass media, even the news in the federal channels, central channels. We can say that they are made in a certain way or delivered in a certain way. Speaking about the fake news, it's again the same. Not so long ago, there was a law adopted, and that was because the state wanted to control content in a case. And on the other side, let's recall the situation during the elections when there is a lot of fake news about this or that candidate, and it may influence certain candidates. In terms of political stories, there is a positive factor. So this is This is quite interesting. These are interesting issues to discuss, but I believe that the state toughens the regulation in this case. It's very simple in traditional mass media because every news has an author. If it's fake news, then the director decides to remove this news and to punish some people responsible for this fake news. But what to do with the information flow, which is, so to say, sorted and by a machine and generated by the public, who does not have bears no responsibility, while the traditional mass media write their boring news because they're responsible before Roskomnadzor, before their readers, etc. So what shall we do in this case? I think it's a simple question. Either there is order or no order. If there is no order, then the focus of attention will be getting to in traditional media, because they will then form the agenda. Because it's important not what is written, but where the attention is focused. Now we see that all the information we get from the Telegram, for example, even with a reference to traditional media. This is an anonymous channel. Could we give the mic to the first row?
Introduce yourself, please. Karina Iraketova. I'm a lawyer and in the sphere of copyright and intellectual property, and I would like to comment who bears the responsibility because this is strictly regulated in our legislation, because even the author, if the author is not known, the administrator of the resource takes the responsibility, and this content should be deleted. But frankly speaking, this is not really so urgent, because the information was already disclosed and it's too late. It cannot be taken back, and we have already discussed this problem. I think that what's important now, if there will be further developments in journalistic profession, because people should know how to respond, how to give a proper response in the media, and probably we should concentrate in this. So, do you mean how to respond and to work out the strategy of responding to this? Yes, this is the same situation as with unauthorized content, with piracy, because you know that they suggested the ways and the tools which make people address to authorized content. For example, if to provide cheaper ways to get authorized content, of course, people prefer to use it instead of unauthorized content. And I think that the government will do the same. So public net should be referred to as mass media, and then the public nets will be regulated the same way. And I believe that the market will regulate the situation also, because those bloggers which allow themselves to download unauthorized content, right now they don't feel any consequences, but they will have this suffer these consequences. Well, I have a friend, and he's a blogger, and this guy, he was unemployed probably for 10 years. Well, he could afford it. And then he created a channel in Instagram, and now he earns about 3 million a month. Yes, but what about the money he spends? Well, so what about the money? Where does he get the money from? From commercials, yes? Am I right? Yes, that's why I believe that commercials should be also regulated. And now we have like a transfer period, because probably you know a well-known article published in one of the journals that sometimes serious agencies invite people from Instagram, and this has never happened before, and this is a new trend. And I believe that this will change the market, and bloggers will stop getting that amount of money. So we just need some more time, and we need to adapt the media and to create platforms profitable for the business, and so to attract users. Yes, my name is Roman Serebryny, and I would like also to join your discussion, because I would like to add, first of all, if to speak about traditional media, then Russian Post takes a lot, and we discussed this with them. And why should we blame, for example, Mark Zuckerberg? Because we should, first of all, understand the situation with traditional, for example, Russian Post. And besides, I completely agree with my colleagues, and I believe that it's not possible not to work with these new public nets. Because now we have a new tendency, because people create a kind of a brand and they even do not register it, and they release the information and download the content there, and they create a certain brand, so the content is monetized, but at the same time this brand is not regulated within the frameworks of the media. And I attend many numerous conferences and forums, and we constantly come to the discussion of these problems, and we often blame Roskomnadzor, and as you did today, I think that if the bloggers will have the same status as the traditional representatives of the traditional media, so it will lead to disappearance of media at all. If to give them not just certain if to give them all the rights, then probably traditional media will stop their existence. As for the fake news, I believe that nowadays we will get a lot of complaints that there is a certain lobbyism in this sphere. If to just glance a look what's happening in the world, in July we will have a Congress of journalists, and 2 years ago this topic was discussed at international level. And this is our unique experience about having laws on fake news, because in the world they are just going to enter this discussion, this endless discussion. For example, what to refer to, which news should be referred to as fake news. But do you remember when the situation with Yakunin, when they told that he was fired, and it was a huge scandal, and that was completely fake. Right now, we do not have any law regulating this fake news. And that's a big question, and these laws should be discussed. And as for the state being able or not being able to see, well, I believe that when Yandex releases the news that, for example, the government will provide investment for officials in order just to teach them how to use Telegram. So sometimes the situation may be really confusing. And the main point is, nowadays, we pass from selling the product to the system of providing services. And mass media, this is treated not as a product, but as a service. And when we're talking about the copyright in terms of the product, we should change our attitude, because we should treat it as a service. Because all the spheres in business nowadays, for example, if you buy a car and now you don't need to drive this car because you have different other possibilities. Once again, even in the sphere of education, this is not a product. This is the system of providing the services. So we need to change the way how we treat these things, how we regulate this content, because the users treat it differently. And the users do not treat this as a product, but once again, as a service.
Just a joke about the services when you buy a ticket to the Bolshoi Theater for the opera Sleeping Beauty. In the ticket it's written that the Sleeping Beauty is a service. So my reaction to the usage of the word blogger, so I should say, I wanted to say that I'm a blogger from 1991, so to say, but I should make some notes. First of all, I cannot completely agree with the esteemed moderator when he says that Facebook produces nothing. Actually, lately, as we have seen, Facebook has been producing a very important product, and namely its censorship policy. Since 2015, in my May account, there has been I have some So I've been subject to the censorship policy for several times, for about 15 times. So there is no legal relationships between bloggers and and social mass media. So they can use your content what in the way they want. So the fundamental principle of the right that a certain norm has no so we constantly face the problem that Facebook can at any moment, absolutely voluntary, turn you off for something which you had done and you did not consider that to be illegal. So I mean to say that the social media are not only media, they are quite tough moderators of public space and very subjective moderators. And people who represent different positions, different views suffer from that. So there is some list to the vision of Mr. Zuckerberg. Nowadays, we have such a vision that Russian traditional families are more we now quite often have a situation when you can express yourself more freely at some officially registered and supervised by Komnadzor website than when you can express yourself in your own blog in Facebook, which is a private one, seems to me. This is one problem. The second problem, which has been mentioned here for several times, we've been you said that the rights of bloggers should be protected, who are quoted, whose photos are stolen, and some of their thoughts are stolen. So, I, frankly speaking, don't protect top bloggers, because the main strategy of bloggers is maximization of their media presence. The more he is quoted, just refer to this blogger. The more you quote him, the better for him, because the blogger makes his consolidated media brand. This model has been described here, this model of creation. So when this consolidated media is created, then, believe me, if you steal a photo from Volodchkova, for example, then you work for her to a greater extent than she works for you. Her Instagram is, to a greater degree, media than most of the medias when you quote her. On the one hand, you're right. At the same time, you're right and you're wrong. I've been a blogger for many years, and I faced the same problem when some idea which was expressed by me was repeated by some other blogger without referring to me. So the text is absolutely stolen in this case, and I believe that it will happen in the future. It happens now. Yes, and usage of your avatar. So I have. Yes, but I believe that there is such a problem. Let's consider these different things. Quotation, when you are quoted, this is plagiarism, and this is the stealing of your name with other content. So these are three different things. And when we put them, and we consider them to be the same and start discuss this as a one problem, so this is not a way out. So most of the bloggers live on the blogs sphere. So they made their brand there and then they moved to some other media. I mean to say that the people who made career in mass media, only in mass media, without being in the blog sphere. So there are no such people, I believe. And the last thing which I wanted to mention is about copyright. I work in for Tsargrad Media, so many people don't like us, and we are very thoroughly, very toughly supervised that there were no somebody other person, picture, or something like that. So, but at the same time, I look at this as a creator of the content, and I understand that the situation is absurd. Because it's one thing when we protect the rights of Sergei Prokofiev and his heirs. This is a problem which has been mentioned here. So in this case, I can understand what we are talking about. But the media policy which is pursued by the major media in referring to pictures, so this policy destroys blogs and it's not clear whose right we protect. We protect the rights of some great anonym who, if you don't know the source of this picture, for example, if you don't know that we can use this picture for public, so we are very much worried that we cannot use this picture. I said about this yesterday. Let's, for this kind of intellectual property, transfer from the rights of some anonym content creator to the registration mechanism of fixation of intellectual property. I mean to say, if you don't care if your picture will be used or not, if you don't care if you will be quoted with your name or you won't, then just don't register. If you want to get some money on that, if you believe that you're so interesting, you're so precious, or you created something important and you want to earn on this, then you register. Otherwise, if we worship this great copyright anonym, then in some time there will be death of the internet content. Thank you very much.
Did you want to add something? Good afternoon. Antin Vladimir Lvovich, Center of Protection of Intellectual Property. If you probably remember the laws on mass media in the United USSR, this is what I actually created. But I would like to ask you a question. You mentioned here that legislation provides favorable conditions to new media, which are not limited. And I have a question in this respect. Our European colleagues try to find the balance in this situation. For example, and they think that social nets should bear the responsibility for copyright. And the second question will be about the right for the revenue if you borrow somebody's content. And then the third question connected with the second one. And who will be in this case the right holder? Because this question, in terms of traditional media, is not solved entirely. Well, it's difficult to answer these questions because this law was just adopted in European Union and it's really difficult to predict how it will work. So probably we should be very careful about our comments. Well, then one more question, please. Well, my question is really difficult because my company is involved in scientific activity. We generate technologies in road construction, and we have many projects and much research. And I would like to know how can I protect myself from plagiarizing, from physical plagiarizing? When I try to registrate the products of my creative activity. So what to do? What should I do? Because the results of my creative work and scientific work, sometimes I see these results in the works of other scholars and scientists, and we are patent holders. I mean, so what to do in this case? I just don't know, because, well, I'm not interested in gaining the profit from this. Well, and I even don't know, I don't really care that this person who stole my intellectual property, but I'm really interested how to behave in this case, because I feel worried that probably my right for that patent, well, it will be undermined, and I don't know how to behave in this situation. If there is no way out, probably I will suggest my own solution to create a kind of a hub, analytical hub. I don't know who should be involved in this. So to create a kind of an analytical hub where it will be explained what you can do and what you cannot do. For example, if someone's article was stolen, so that's the problem of plagiarizing, and we really need a kind of a hub where you could see the consequences for these unlawful actions. Yes, you are the author. If you created intellectual property, first of all, you are to prove that you are the author. If some people borrow this, you have a patent. You have, for example, a patent and you have articles. You somehow mix these different things, because if you have a registered patent, then you can punish for those who borrowed and who stole your patent. But articles, once again, articles, this is a different thing. This is not connected with patent. We should differentiate between these two things. Well, if, for example, the results of your creative work was stolen, for example, some parts of the article were stolen, then, and without giving any reference to you, then we can also punish for these kinds of stealing the results of intellectual property. Well, I'm talking about big data. because sometimes it is not possible to, in terms of the big data, it's not possible to provide every time the references. Well, this is the case of plagiarizing. If some parts of your articles were taken without the reference, this is the violation, this is the infringement of your right. How to respond? Well, how to respond? You should address a lawyer who will help you. Well, probably we are running out of time and we should finish, so let's sum it up. I think that these platforms must show and must be devoted not to the discussion how the government should regulate us. No, that is the way to find out the ways of self-regulations. Because the problem is sometimes journalists even don't know how to spread the information. And these platforms, we must pay more attention to self-regulation, to professional self-regulation. Well, you know, that's a difficult problem, because how am I to regulate Mark Zuckerberg? Well, this is not the point. I'm coming back to my first idea, because Mark Zuckerberg, this is, well, he does, his activity is really important in this case, because a lot of people create content for these media, and these media manipulate the consciousness of millions of people and dictate traditional media how to behave, and stealing the money and the profit from this traditional medium. I believe that technological revolution will finally abolish this choice between the good and the evil. You will just have no choice. You will just do what the algorithm tells you to do. You will not have any choice. And the situation with Facebook, this is the result of absence of any choice. We don't have an alternative. We can, of course, talk about such groups as Wiki or Одноклассники, but they do not impact the situation greatly, because they are really insignificant. It's difficult for us to provide the basis for this self-regulation. No, I believe that this is the task of the government, the responsibility of the government. Well, I don't try to blame Facebook, but it is so powerful that it is really dominating. This Facebook really dominates the situation, and that is why we need the government. Yes, but this is, once again, this is not the case of you are not talking probably about the help on behalf of the government. You are talking about the help on behalf of the big corporates. Well, you see, the situation is still not clear today when old norms do not work and new norms are not created and nobody understands the essence of this new digital world and how to regulate, for example, the sphere of this new media, or this will prevent us from freedom, this will violate the freedom of speech. We have a lot of problems in this, and as a journalist, I would like to say that it's great to live in such times, because it is, at least for a journalist, it is really interesting to live and to experience all these challenges. Because when we don't have any perfect criteria, yes, then we need to find out our own strategy, which will help us to respond to the challenges. This must be developed, not prohibited. So we need to get ready to live in this situation of indefiniteness, and this is a good news for a journalist, because at least we will have work to do. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Спасибо.
Я все поставлю где-то через полчаса.
Мне кажется, сейчас что ты откроешь. Да я тебе пришлю, не вопрос. Немедленно тебе надо.